On your Monday episode of Locked On Blue Jays, the Toronto Blue Jays sneak into the playoffs in the least inspiring way possible, and we wouldn't have it any other way.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Blue Jays, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Monday, October the 2nd. It is Playoffs Eve. And I'm one of your hosts, Sean Woodley. I'm the host of Locked On Raptors over on the NBA side of the Locked On Network. And with me is our pal Mike DiStefano, another afflicted Toronto Blue Jays fan who I'm sure is very thrilled by the really convincing fashion by which the Blue Jays qualified for the postseason. He's, of course, the co-host of Locked On Leafs. He's shaking his head. It doesn't matter anymore, Mike. They're in the playoffs. It's all out the window. Who cares?
It does not matter. It's just get in, all right? Just get in, right? They had to win one game throughout this series, and they had to make sure that Seattle lost one game, and that was it. That was the magic number 2, a win and a loss. And they got it done. They got their dub early, and then they gave it away, a chance to win it on Saturday, and then Sunday didn't matter because Seattle had already pissed away their chance Saturday night, and it was already what we knew was going to happen. But what did happen was because of the loss. Now we know it's not going to be against Tampa Bay, so they don't got to go down to the Trop. Now the Jays got the Minnesota Twins with Houston collecting a W tonight as well.
Yeah, look, was I actually kind of hoping to see them play the Tampa Bay Rays to exercise some demons and because they're super injured? Yes, I was. However, am I excited to watch the Blue Jays play baseball at a real baseball stadium in the playoffs? You betcha. We're going to get into all that on today's show. We're going to get into a little quick recap of the weekend series with the Rays, which by the end meant nothing. Poor Wes Parsons. We'll also get into the playoff roster and try to align the 13 pitchers and 13 batters who will take part for the Blue Jays in the Wild Card Series against the Minnesota Twins beginning on Tuesday. Today's show, however, is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Mike. Let's dig into some takeaways from the weekend. As we mentioned, the win on Friday set them up in a good spot where they just needed either one win from their own end or one loss from the Mariners' end to a Texas team that was in fact playing for stuff and eventually didn't win the division, which I kind of find very funny as a longtime Texas Rangers hater as well. The Houston Astros end up getting the top spot in the AL West in that clumped up division. The Rangers will take on the Tampa Bay Rays, and of course the Blue Jays will take on the Twins. Do you have any sort of pullaways from this weekend, Mike? Maybe we just start with, how do you feel about the Minnesota Twins being the matchup for your Toronto Blue Jays?
I mean, I personally wanted to see that be the case anyways. Like, I ultimately, for as good as the Twins pitching staff is, I think that is probably a team that Toronto will match up better against, as opposed to having to go down to the Trop and play Tampa, who we just saw, difficult team. Like, injuries, they're like, regardless, they're still very much the boogeyman of the American League East when it comes to the Blue Jays specifically. They have a really tough time winning there, and having to go down there and probably play, 2 games maybe, it would have been tough. So I like how it turned out. I think the Jays have a good opportunity to go in there and beat Minnesota. I mean, this series was tied at the end of the day, 3-3 through the regular season, and now it comes down to when it really matters, right? Here in the playoffs, let's see who can get that little rubber match, I suppose, and win themselves a spot into the divisional round.
Absolutely. And, we talked about the Rays and how they were, in fact, very injured. This is true. A lot of their starting pitching depth, of course, sapped. Shane McClanahan, Drew Rasmussen on down the line. A lot of their position players either out with injury or with crimes. And the Blue Jays have kind of had a clean bill of health for the most part this season. And they will have the health advantage going in to the Twins series as well. The Twins have a whole lot of injuries on the go right now themselves. Byron Buxton, Jorge Polanco got banged up just this past week on Friday, I believe. So that's kind of up in the air. Dallas Keuchel's on the IL. You've got Royce Lewis on the IL. Carlos Correa, he's slated to return on Tuesday from the IL, but he was sidelined with plantar fasciitis. Joey Gallo's hurt. Nick Gordon's not on the team. There's a lot of dudes who are not available. Tyler Mahle, however you say it, had Tommy John this year. So it's not like the Twins are rolling in with like the most healthy roster in the world.
Right.
The Blue Jays have the advantage there as well. And the Blue Jays should feel pretty good overall against the Twins. Obviously, I think because they're part of that stanky division in the Central, there's just this sort of like icky factor to the Twins where it's like, oh, gross. They're the best team of the garbage pile of teams. Great for them. But like they're a real baseball team. Their pitching's good. And I don't think they're to be overlooked. But yeah, I think if you're the Jays, you have to go in feeling you're the favorite here, right?
Well, for sure. And I would imagine that, if you go and check FanDuel, we probably will see some of these odds come out for the series now that things are pretty locked in. And I'd be surprised if the Blue Jays weren't the favorites to win this series. I know they're the 6th seed, technically, the 6 versus 3. But
on the road for all 3, too.
But they're the better team, ultimately. Yeah. They're the better team. And look, the Jays, it's not like they've had home field advantage all that much this year anyways, right? So they've been able to win some games out on the road. So I think that they're in pretty good shape to do so. And look, for me, when I look at this team, I just like what I've seen over the course of the last week or so, right? After you saw the back-to-back shutouts that they put against the Yankees, you finally saw the bats start to come alive in the final game against them. And then the last couple of games here in this final stretch, you saw couple of home runs at a Matt Chapman, which would be huge if you can get that back going into the postseason. Brandon Belt returned from injury, and you saw him have some effect, and he's getting some
raking.
Hits.
Brandon Belt is raking. He's so good.
So good. Like Cavan Biggio has been extremely effective at the plate and on defense. Like he's just been a really good player for this team. Bo Bichette obviously has been consistent all year long. So you're seeing a lot of guys. I think Varsho even got in on the home run party this weekend. So you're seeing a lot of guys and the bats starting to come around, which is a great sign for this team because that's always been kind of the question mark. The pitching is there, right? Gausman's going to do his thing. Bassett, Barrios going back into his old barn. Hopefully he can do the same thing. But can they get the offense going? And if what we've seen over the last final, 5 games is an indication. Even the last couple of weeks has been a little bit better. I feel good about this Jays team. I really do in this series against the Twins. Because the Twins, they don't really, like the bats aren't really there. Like they got some pop, and I think they're like 3rd in the league in home runs. But in terms of batting average and getting on base, they're not really that great at. I think they have a 2-something batting average throughout the season, 21st in the league when it comes to batting average. So, they're not a team that necessarily is putting balls in play all too much. So I think that bodes well for Toronto.
Yeah, the thing with Minnesota, we talked about the pitching staff, very good. The offense actually comes in ahead of the Blue Jays just in terms of weighted runs created plus, but very close. Number 6 in the majors at 109 WRC plus. The Blue Jays number 9 at 107, so very close there. Both kind of disappointing in their own ways. The Jays can get on base, but they can't hit for power. It's kind of the inverse for Minnesota. Yeah. And then the defense is really the big difference here. If you're looking for an edge, if you're looking for something to suggest the Blue Jays have this in the bag, it's the defense. The Jays were the number 3 team in baseball per Fangraphs in defensive runs saved above average. The Minnesota Twins were 20th at a minus 28.9. The Blue Jays are a plus 6.7 per this Fangraph metric. So that is great to see as far as like what wins in the playoffs, classically speaking.
Oh, for sure. Like you look at the playoffs, I mean, all it takes is realistically 1 or 2 errors in a game and you're done. That's it.
Ryan Goins, anybody?
Ryan Goins. I mean, like you could go down the list. It's gone in favor of them too. Look at the game 5, right? The bat flip. That whole inning was set up by a couple of big bloopers that
we love. Elvis Andrus. I had his jersey at home, just like in my closet because we love him so much.
But so that's what I'm saying. So if you get into a situation late in the game and someone pooches a ball and it extends an inning, you never know, especially with this team in the lineup. It's pretty deep. It's very balanced as well. And if everyone's hitting, I think that the Jays could do some damage here. They really, really can. So if the Twins, if they do start booting it around on the infield, that's going to be troublesome for them.
For sure. And I think, overall, we know it's been a maddening season. Truly one of the most frustrating baseball teams I think I've ever hitched my wagon to. Always feeling like it's just now's the time they're going to get on a roll. And they never quite got on that roll. They finished with just 89 wins. It doesn't feel very inspiring. You should want more than that. You should be asking for more than what there's been the last couple seasons where they're flirting with 90. This is their lowest win total in the last 3 seasons. This is probably the weakest of the 3 rosters they've had top to bottom, and yet I feel pretty good about their chances in an AL that I don't feel like has any juggernaut teams necessarily. And they also boast pitching and defense that are among the best in all of baseball, which again, like the whole theory that, the fundamentals win in the playoffs thing is sure going to come under test here for this Blue Jays team, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. So, they're partying tonight. If you saw the celebration, which maybe we could talk about that in a moment, but I'm not a fan of that nonsense.
Boo! You see, don't be a joy kill. Come on now. It's a 162 game season. Making the playoffs is in fact an accomplishment.
No,
I'm not going to hear this. You can only have champagne if you win the World Series. Man, what is wrong with you?
You just finished pooping on him, saying, "Oh, you wanted to win more games." Yeah, of course.
It would have been nice.
You won the pennant,
they would have celebrated sooner.
And if you won something, they didn't win anything. They luckily had the Seattle Mariners lose last night, and that allowed them to clinch a playoff spot. They didn't do nothing. So to celebrate it in a loss today, I think is kind of silly. I can't stand it. If it was a big blowout win and you finish on a high note, sure. But to go out there, and I know that they put out a terrible lineup tonight, and they just threw out some guys, and you get a pitcher out there. Poor, I can't remember what his name.
Poor Wes Parsons, just sent out there to have his last big league appearance ever. Like he's never coming back from that one.
The dude gives up 8 runs in like the first 2 innings, and you're going back out there.
Keep on out there. Got to keep them arms fresh. Yeah.
Yeah, you're going out there. Like, I really don't care if you get tagged for 18.
If nothing else, I hope Wes Parsons getting loaded during the celebration.
He should.
He deserves it.
He does deserve it. Absolutely. I mean, for him, he can party, all right? He can party. But everyone else, I think it's a little bush league for me, just considering how they literally limped into the playoffs and then to party 30 minutes, not even like 20 minutes after a loss in game 162. It's a little bush league for me, but
it's all right, Mike. We're gonna disagree on this one, and that's fine. I'm just gonna say, you have more recently been on Toronto sports radio than I have. I feel like that's still in your bones, and that's where this take is coming from.
Well, what did you win? Like, did you watch the post game celebration? Like they had a rave.
Of course I didn't. I'm not watching that stuff.
They had a rave in the
clips
clubhouse.
on Twitter.
But they have a rave in a clubhouse, and then they've got, on Sportsnet, you've got Hazel May going around interviewing everybody as if they've won something. They didn't win anything. They
get to wear October t-shirts. That is an accomplishment. Having playoff merch to sell is a thing worth celebrating, Mike. Come on now.
It's not, but I digress. I think it's silly. Let us know in the comments below what you guys think. Let us know in the comments.
Do you like fun, or are you a joy kill like our pal Mike over here? Let us know in the comments.
They killed the joy by playing like crap, blowing it in the 10th on Saturday, and then absolutely putting up a stinker on Sunday. It's the Jays' fault, not mine. Jays.
We've gone far too long, Mike. We're going to come back at the other side and set up the playoff roster. Dig into the 13 pitchers and 13 hitters who will comprise the team starting on Tuesday in Minnesota at Target Field. We'll do that in just a sec. But first, must tell you about our good friends over at Game Time, who are the place that you want to be going if you're trying to find last-minute tickets, say, to the Major League Baseball playoffs. Maybe you want to take a little trek down to Minnesota this week and get tickets for the games this week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday in Minneapolis. You can go and do that by going to Game Time and perusing all of their wonderful last-minute deals. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event, and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. You can find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. With zone deals, you get to pick the section, and Game Time picks the seats for an average of 18% savings. And the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. That is the Game Time guarantee. Download the Game Time app and create an account and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first pitches to take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB, LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, we continue on here. Mike DiStefano, Sean Woodley here to lead you through the assembling of the playoff roster going into this series against the Twins. We're podcasters, Mike. We have to talk about the playoff roster. That's just the rite of passage here now that we are doing this Blue Jays show. So, again, 26-man roster eligible for the playoffs. Means there's a couple guys we're going to have to get the chop from what they're currently throwing out there. 13 pitchers available, 13 position players available. We know the guys who are the obvious ones, right? Gausman, Bassett, Berríos, I would assume Kikuchi. We'll start with the pitching. We'll get into hitting in the back part. Gausman, Bassett, Berríos, I would assume Kikuchi for emergency/bulk work if needed at some point in one of these games.
Wes Parsons,
you want to have
sure.
him there. Yeah. Jordan Romano, Eric Swanson, Jordan Hicks, Tim Meza, Jimmy Garcia, Genesis Cabrera, and Chad Green, I feel like, are the locks for the next sort of section. That's 11 guys. Do you have any quibbles with anyone there who's a lock?
No, I think those guys are certainly dudes who are definitely going to be on this postseason roster. You're not throwing Wes Parsons in that list.
I mean, you could throw him a bone. You know, you get down early in a game. You want to throw him out there to just kind of eat up some innings, save some arms. Maybe you do that.
I hope that's not the case, because if that were the case, the Jays would be down like 13-1 in the second inning. That would be the only way that guy sees the field. So let's not waste a spot on Wes Parsons. He did his job, saved some arms, saved some energy for some pitchers today. But, he's done now. Thank you. Bye.
I had a friend go to the game, and it was apparently just pretty grim just to behold in person Wes Parsons just getting completely lit up by the Rays B team. Tough stuff, really grim. But hey, shout out to Wes Parsons. He pitched in the majors, which is more than you or I will ever be able to say.
Very true.
What's your sort of those bullpen arms, right? We know with the starters, I'm assuming we're going to see Bassett in game 2, Berríos game 3. We'll see. Fun little subplot with Berríos going back to his old stomping grounds as well. That's cool.
Yeah.
But so you got Romano, Swanson, Hicks, Meza, Garcia, Cabrera, Green. Who do you trust the most right now among those? Obviously, bullpen trust is always a moving target. Jordan Romano had himself a couple of rough outings. He had a fine, clean inning on Saturday during the extra innings game. That was good to see. Jordan Hicks had been absolutely lights out. He gives up a couple of runs and gets the loss in that extra innings game. That's not as great to see. Where are you at as far as just the overall trust level with these guys?
Yeah, I mean, you got to have a pretty high level of trust in this bullpen. They've been able to get the job done pretty well all season. There hasn't been many, hiccups throughout the year once they settled in and they went out and they brought in Genesis Cabrera, who was fantastic for them down the stretch. And they brought in Jordan Hicks, and Romano was pretty good for most of the part, outside of that little blip he had last week. And so I think that this is a group that you have a lot of confidence in. Who do you have the most in? I guess you got to go Jordan Hicks. I know that he did give up the runs the other day against Tampa in the 10th inning, but ultimately you threw him out there for a second, go out there, not the second inning, and he's starting with men on base. And it's a weird situation. And it is what it is. But ultimately, I think you still have a lot of faith in him and Romano as your 8th and 9th guy. So you've got a lot of faith in them. You saw Romano pitching yesterday, had a couple of ticks up there on the radar gun too. That was nice to see him get up to 98, 99 again. Garcia, Swanson, you feel really good about those guys. So I don't know, right now, if there's really a weak link, Trevor Richards would be the weak link. And I'm not
we'll
sure
get to Trevor Richards. Don't you worry.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So right now, the guys who we are comfortable with saying, yes, they're totally going to be on the roster. There's no question marks about it. There's no question marks because you have blind faith in these guys that they'll continue to perform well, just like they've done so far for the Jays this season.
Mm-hmm. I will say, the guy I trust the most, I would trust my life to this guy, even though he did give up a run today, which is a rare occurrence for a guy with a 1.52 ERA for the season. But Tim Meza, man, oh man, what a season for him. A guy who, when he made the team back in March, April, I was like, Really? We're doing the Tim Mesa thing again? This is our lefty out of the bullpen? Yeah, no. Turns out they're smarter than I am, and Tim Mesa is a lot better than I gave him any credit for coming into this season. A really, really awesome year for him. Again, a 1.52 ERA he finishes up with, and that's with giving up a run today. Just a really, really outstanding season for Tim Mesa. I'm trying to find here the total. He gave up 8 earned runs all season long. Crazy. In 68 appearances. Just outstanding stuff from Tim
Against
Mesa.
righties and lefties too. Like it
Yeah,
wasn't even like
just
he had to be a
lights out.
specialist. He was just a really, really solid season. And yeah, you have immense trust that he'll be able to come in and lock things down in a tight game. And like we know what happens in the postseason. Starters only go 4 or 5 innings. So you're gonna have to have, guys pitch in the 5th, 6th, 7th innings. So, having Garcia, having Mesa, having Swanson to go ahead of the Romano and the Hicks. Like you feel good about this bullpen. It's probably the best I've felt about a bullpen, that the Jays have been able to produce in many, many years.
I mean, they feel like right now the types of teams they used to come up against in the playoffs and be horrified about, right? Like, oh no, you're playing Cleveland and they have 4 fire-breathing dragons coming out of their bullpen, and a game is 5 innings long, and Andrew Miller comes in. It makes you feel the deepest depths of despair you can imagine as a baseball fan. Do they have an Andrew Miller on this team? Maybe not, but they have a pretty damn good collection of dudes and a lot of different looks, a lot of different kind of styles of pitcher they can throw out at different teams as well. Sorry, I misspoke. Tim Mesa, 9 earned runs after today's earned runs. So pathetic. Cut him. Should make the roster. He's awesome. Let's get to the final 2 spots. There's essentially probably 4 guys you could say here, but it's probably more like 3. Hyunjin Ryu was not notably one of the starters I mentioned because it's a 3-game series. You probably don't really need Ryu. However, he's been good since coming back in. He's been rock solid. You have Jay Jackson, you have Trevor Richards, and you have Nate Pearson. Where are you coming down here on which of these guys should make those last 2 spots? Is there any utility whatsoever to having Hyunjin Ryu on the playoff roster here, Mike?
Is there utility? Yes, only because it gives you like another long inning relief type of guy, I suppose would be like the reason why you would put him out there. So it's not just Kikuchi, but you're hoping you don't need a long inning relief, right? So like that's not what you're banking on. That's not what you're praying for. If you go 2 to 3 games where you need to go back into the long inning, you're probably not sitting good and sitting pretty anyways. I don't know. I because like maybe if you wanted another lefty in there might be the reason why you would put Hyunjin Ryu in your bullpen.
But you're not going to bring him out as like a lefty specialist
No,
guy.
No, you're not. But he is somebody who can come in and maybe he's your long inning guy, and Kikuchi, who can throw a little bit harder. You can bring in for like 1 or 2 innings. Like that would be the only reason why I think he makes this roster. Like I don't have him on my final roster. I think Ryu pitched his final performance as a Blue Jay this weekend. Good career. Thank you very much. He signed a big fat ticket years ago, and he was a Cy Young nominee his first season with the Blue Jays in that shortened year. And then obviously there's the sticky stuff, and then the injury came, and he only ended up playing half the season this year. Did his job, right? Came in and kind of solidified things a little bit with Manoah end up absolutely pooping his pants this season. But I think that's probably the end of the road for Ryu, at least for the short 3-game series. I don't know if there's going to be a spot for him. I would rather have someone who's got probably just some more experience out there in a relief role, who you have a little bit more faith in, could throw harder. So I personally, of those 4 pitchers that you brought up, I personally have Jay Jackson, Nate Pearson as my other 2 relievers that I got in the bullpen.
I think I'm with you. Jay Jackson's just been really good, right? Like a 2.12 ERA. He's been rock solid in his, it's not like he's getting the super high leverage innings or anything like that, but 25 appearances. He's been everything you could possibly want from your 7th or 8th best reliever. That's just like a total luxury to have him also dealing when he comes in. Nate Pearson, obviously, it's been very up and down for him this season. The highlights have been very encouraging and really nice to see him kind of get back in the swing. That said, I think there is a lot of blow-up potential anytime Nate Pearson takes the mound, just because, it's pretty volatile, the whole Nate Pearson experience. Talk about volatile, though, man. Trevor Richards in the month of September plus October.
I want
It's
nothing.
been grim.
No Trevor Richards stock. I'm not buying any of that stock. I think again, just like Hyun-Jin Ryu, thank you very much. You did your thing this year, and you can watch from afar. If we win a championship, you'll get a ring. But that's probably it for Richards. Definitely,
The Richards magic really seems to have dissipated after he was brilliant.
His first half
brilliant for long stretches. Yeah.
And I do wonder, though, like this is us making this determination. I do wonder if we look at, is Pete Walker and is John Schneider, are they going to look at it and say, if he can get it going again, like we've seen him pitch well. And in pro sports, sometimes there's some sort of faith that we don't understand. Like last year, there was a lot of faith in Yusei Kikuchi, and they're like, no, he's a good pitcher. He'll do it. He could still get. Meanwhile, everyone else in Blue Jays land wanted that guy DFA'd. Luckily, it didn't happen. The clock resets come postseason time, right? The mind can reset, and maybe we do see Trevor Richards make his way onto this roster. He's another guy who could potentially be a long inning relief arm. And I just wonder if you look at it and you say, hey, he's been with us all year. Maybe with this reset, potentially he can get back to being who he was early on. I don't know. That's just would be what I'd be preaching if I were John Schneider. If I did put him on the roster, that would be what I'd be telling everybody in the media.
Yeah, I don't know if you can justify putting a guy on who's given up 17 runs and 12 and a third in September, right? Like,
I agree.
I don't want to hear that justification from Johnson. Look, if Trevor Richards makes the team, he's probably still not really getting any kind of remotely high leverage inning, right? I was kind of floored that he came in when he came in the game on Saturday when it was still up in the air as to whether or not they were going to make the playoffs or not. For him to be the guy in out of the pen to replace Ryu, I was like, really? We're going with this? In like a pretty high leverage spot. He gives up the homer right away. Wasn't great. I have no trust left in Trevor Richards. I don't think a serious team with serious playoff intentions has Trevor Richards the way he's pitching on its playoff roster. As much as the changeup is a pitch that has like the highest upside of any single pitch any of these four guys possesses, I don't think it's worth it for the meatballs he's been serving up for the better part of his last month and a half going out to the bump. So, yeah, it sucks. He's been great this season. He's lasted on the roster about 5 months longer than I expected Trevor Richards to last on this roster. But I think it probably is time to, retire the notion that Trevor Richards is like this excellent high leverage reliever. He just has not proven capable of that and has had a really, really rough month at the worst possible time. So we're going Jay Jackson, Nate Pearson as guys 11 or 12 and 13. You heard it here first. We'll see when they announce it a little bit closer towards Tuesday. I think Tuesday morning is the deadline to announce the roster.
10 a.m. 10 a.m.
There you go. We will come back and look into the position player situation. Maybe a little less contentious, so maybe a little more contentious in a couple spots. Do you need a base stealing dude who can't hit at all? We'll get into that coming up in just a sec. But first, just a reminder, go check out our respective podcasts. Locked On Leafs covers the wonderful Toronto Maple Leafs as they are wonderful. That's a word for them. But the super annoying Toronto Maple Leafs as they try to go make a run and run it back again. And the Toronto Raptors, also pretty annoying right now, have media day tomorrow. I'll be there. And so I'll have an episode reacting to that on Locked On Raptors on Monday afternoon sometime. Go check both shows out wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. All right, Mike. The 13 batters. Again, there's a lot of dudes here who are locks, right? Vlad, Bo, Springer, Belt, Varsho, Kiermaier, Kirk, Heineman, unfortunately with Danny Jansen not slated to, but maybe like they were talking today, ALCS today, maybe.
Yeah, if they can make it that far. Yeah, hopefully, yeah. Man. Fingers crossed.
We would love Jano back. Clutch Dan would be fantastic. You've got so Heineman's number 8. You got Cavan Biggio. He's not going anywhere. Let's talk for a sec about Biggio. We'll get to the other guys in a sec, but Biggio has gone from a guy. If we had this conversation back in, say, I don't know, May or June, I'm probably just like, Cavan Biggio, playoff roster? Ha 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 ha. What a ridiculous notion. You can't not have him there. He's like the super utility man we all dreamed he would be one day. He's like living the Ben Zobrist dream, Mike. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, honestly, he is. He's clearly making this roster. I mean, there's a very strong chance he's a starter in this game. I
Mhm.
legitimately believe like Cavan Biggio is someone who you want in your lineup. Like he is somebody who's hitting the ball, seeing the ball well, and that's what you need come playoff time. Plus, he gives you that other element of somebody who can bat from the left side of the plate. And if you're going up against Pablo Lopez in game one as the projected starter, I think that Biggio has an opportunity to come in and he could potentially be that guy. Plus, Biggio actually got a home run on Pablo
Yeah.
Lopez earlier this season. So, if that's any indication too, someone who has had some success against that guy at Target Field, I believe, where that game was played. So, dude, I think Biggio's been outstanding in this second half and is one of the reasons why this team was able to kind of turn it around and get themselves into the postseason. It's weird, man. Like, realistically, you look at two guys who've really turned it around for this team. And it's Cavan Biggio and Davis Schneider. And I
Mhm.
don't think either of those two, even themselves, would have thought that they would be legitimate, integral parts of getting this team to the postseason, but they really are.
We will talk about Davis Schneider in a moment, but yeah, Biggio, awesome, 112 OPS plus in September, October, really, really awesome close to the season for him. Playing like just picking it wherever he's playing defensively, he's been fantastic as well. Am I
Yeah.
being a little hyperbolic calling him Ben Zobrist 2.0? Perhaps, but that's what you do when you get excited about a guy. And certainly at his best, that's the exact type of archetype he's been able to fill for this team. Loving Cavan Biggio. He is a no doubt roster player for the wild card series. You got Matt Chapman, of course. He's not going anywhere. Obviously, the bat's not been there, but the glove is essential. And he had a couple bombs over this past week of the season, so encouraging signs there. Whit Merrifield plays all over the place. Do I want him playing a lot in a playoff series? Probably not. It seems like the Whit magic is very much kind of fallen off as well. I'm not super like eager to see Whit Merrifield out there for really important at bats, but he can play outfield, he can play second, he can kind of do a little bit of everything for you. He's a good base runner, like he's going to be on the team. You got Santiago Espinal, Davis Schneider, and Cam Eden as kind of the three final guys here, Mike. Where are you at for two spots between those three guys? Cam Eden, obviously the speedster, 53 steals on like 58 attempts at AAA. Just
Yeah.
he's the Terrence Gore of this team, right? Every playoff team seems to have this sort of specialty ace up their sleeve type base runner. And then you've got Davis Schneider and Santiago Espinal play similar positions. Obviously, Schneider, I guess both can kind of move around the infield, so it's kind of similar there. Schneider obviously has had a much sort of more loud and impressive season in the limited time he's been in there. However, it was a pretty rough go for him over the last few weeks of the season. He picked up a couple doubles in today's game, or was it
Yeah, I did.
yesterday's game? But he just, oh, it was today's game, yeah. Picked a couple doubles, but those are his first hits since the Texas series. And so, I don't know. I love Davis Schneider. He's been a joy.
Yeah.
The mustache is a thrill to behold. He probably belongs on this team over Espinal just based on merit over the last part of the season. I kind of have not enjoyed a single Santiago Espinal at bat this season, but where are you at between those two considering the slump Schneider has found himself in?
I do have him on the roster over Santiago Espinal. And I know that he's in the slump, and it is unfortunate. He did get a couple of doubles as you noted, so he kind of got out of it. Hopefully, he can continue on if he ends up getting the opportunity to be on this roster. But I think he's earned the chance to be on this roster, and he's got more pop. And when you're bringing somebody in off the bench, you want to bring often someone who might have a little bit more pop to him, someone who can hit a double or hit a home run. And I think I saw the stat came out today, like 66% of this guy's hits were multi-bag hits. Like, it was
Crazy.
insane. Like the guy's just pop city. So I think you're gonna want his bat, although he may not put the ball in play recently as often as maybe Espinal was able to do. And Espinal, I know last year was an all-star, and it was kind of a weird season for him. I think Davis Schneider, you kind of got to roll with him, and he's someone who can play all over the diamond also, so you can kind of, once you have to put him in the lineup, you don't have to waste other defensive substitutions. You can kind of put him anywhere and he'll be all right. So I personally have Davis Schneider making the team over Espinal.
Yeah, SB's been a fun player. He was a great story last season. I just don't really think it's there for him right now. 82 WRC plus for the season, just not at all where he'd been before.
No.
And he finished last year as an exactly league average player too. Like it really has been since the All-Star break of last season that the Espinal decline has been on display. And while Schneider has been cold of late, I'm with you. I think the pop he brings is a valuable thing to have late in the game. If maybe you're looking for a dong, he obviously has that. The forearms, the size of like a bodybuilder's legs. It's crazy. He's a monster. And also the walk rate, right? You come into a game, like having some discipline is never a bad thing. I can think back to a lot of really important Blue Jays playoff at-bats where there just was no plate discipline whatsoever and taking bad pitches, and Ben Revere swinging at awful pitches as a pinch hitter late in the game. Or was he a starter in that game?
Well, there's nothing
Ben
worse.
Revere that year. Boy, oh boy.
There is nothing worse than when your pinch hitter comes in and strikes out. Like,
yeah, just flailing around. And Davis Schneider does not do that. I mean, he struck out. He has a 31% strikeout rate apparently. So
well, he
swing
started
and miss.
striking. His thing, he started striking out a lot, like in this slump, right? He was striking a lot in the slump, but early on, he was a lot
very
of contact.
noisy sample he's got.
Hard contact too.
Yeah, he was a 22% strikeout guy in AAA this season, and 14.7% walk rate. That is twice the walk rate of Santiago Espinal. I think that's probably the thing that does it for me. It's just like he's gonna have a better shot of getting on base than Santiago Espinal is, and for a late game pinch hitter, I think that's the move. I don't think there's a discernible difference with them defensively. In fact, Davis Schneider's been a positive defensive player per Fangraphs this season, and Santiago Espinal has been a negative defensive player. So I kind of think it's not really a question there. I guess the question would be, is Cam Eden just on the roster for you, Mike? Like you just need that base running, and that's where Espinal gets squeezed? Or would you make an argument for Espinal over Cam Eden?
Did you consider an Ernie Clement, by the way, in this conversation at all?
I did not. I suppose you could, and I guess Spencer Horwitz could also be considered as well if they could.
Yeah,
call him
I don't have him on my roster, but he was in consideration. Like I did think really quickly, do I want to bring Ernie Clement up and potentially be, one of those guys who can come in here, 885 OPS this year and short, only 50 some odd plate appearances, but he's somebody who John Schneider early on in the season leaned on often as a guy off the bench that he trusted to come in and maybe get a hit really well in AAA as well. He was someone who I considered, but I did leave off the roster because I do think that Cam Eden will probably get a chance to just be their bad guy, like someone who can get in there and steal bases. Like we've seen here in Toronto how important it could be late in the game for you to go out there and steal a base, right? Like, I mean, Dalton Pompey ring a bell to you. Like, I think that's kind of the role that we're going to see Cam Eden go out there. Like, he's not going to grab a bat. He finally got his first hit of his career in the game on Sunday. He's not going to be grabbing any bats at any point in the series. But late in the game, someone gets on base. They need a run. He's someone who definitely can go in there, steal a base, or potentially, go from first to third if you get on base. Like he is going to provide some speed on the base paths, which is something you need. You need to create runs for yourself in the postseason. They're very hard to come by. When we get someone who can, pick up an extra base, whether if it's via a steal or because you got the wheels to go from first to third or whatever. Go from second to home on a bloop single. That is really an important factor to have on your bench come postseason time. So I think that he's a dude who's going to be able to do that.
I think Cam Eden makes my team for the mere instance in which Alejandro Kirk gets on base and is in scoring position in a big position in a game, right? Like
Like
far too many times this year, it's been, well, they can't take Kirk out. His bat's too important. Like, that changes in the playoffs, right? You're trying to get every single run across. Every opportunity is golden, and you just can't have Kirk not scoring from second on a base hit. Cam Eden will do that for you.
Let me put this scenario out there, right? The Jays are down by a run in the ninth inning. Kirk up the bat. He's first batter up. He hits lines a double into the outfield. Now all of a sudden you want Kirk sitting there on second base?
Absolutely not.
No.
No.
Like, I would go and get Davis Schneider, where now it's like, okay, all we need is maybe a bunt a guy over, and then you get the one out, and now you're sitting there, and now you got a good opportunity to try and get a sac fly, or somebody does get a single, and you can run it all the way through to home plate. So I think those scenarios are going to present themselves, because they always do in the postseason. So you want to be ready for it. I think the Jays would be smart to have a guy off the bench who can do that for sure.
Yeah, I think just having the versatility of roster options is kind of the reason Eden makes it over Espinal, because Espinal Schneider does kind of feel like a little bit of a hat on a hat, right? It's like, okay, same guy, a little bit of overlap. You've already got Witt. You've already got, it's not like Bo's coming out of games or anything like that for defense late in games either. So, yeah, I think Cam Eden's on the team for sure. And Espinal, sadly, does not make it. We'll see. Things can change. Each series is different as well, right? Guys get hurt, guys go up and down. But for now, I think that's where we're going to land on who should be making this roster. We will be back, Mike, on Tuesday to tee up the series against the Twins. How exciting. It's a thrill. The playoffs, baby. We love it. And, of course, we'll have the episodes recapping the games throughout the postseason as well. Mike, anything you want to promote for the good people there before we wrap this bad boy up?
If you're excited for the Jays, I'm with you. But if you're also excited for the Leafs season that's about to start, you can also go check out the Locked On Leafs podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, wherever it may be. You can also find me on Twitter. I'll be live tweeting through these Jays games as well. So come and, tweet with me, I suppose, at Mickey_Canuck on Twitter. X. And now X.
No, it's not. And as we have been recording, the times of the games have come out. 4:38 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesday. Game 1.
Classic.
Gausman, Pablo Lopez projected to go for the Twins. Should be a blast. We will have it all teed up and ready for you as we get closer. And until then, thank you so much. Go listen to Locked On Raptors. In my case, again, Media Day tomorrow should be an interesting one, to say the least. And I'll have a podcast breaking it all down later on in the day. But for now, thanks so much for hanging out. We'll talk to you on Tuesday with another episode of Locked On Blue Jays. Bye-bye.